You said you want to be controversial? Okay, then I'll be controversial. The government is not only just the biggest gatekeeper, but the people at the top of the government don't even know that they are.
The government plays a very major role there. There is some institutions for the government that support the small businesses. The challenge that we have, people are not informed. They don't know where to go to get some support.
Hello, my name is Webster Kutoane, and welcome again to our Unfiltered conversation, a podcast Action Speaks. Yet another episode that is going to be motivational and very, very much inspiring. And I'm not alone. Today I'm with my co-host, Boitumelo Talafala, all the way from Pretoria, Mahlanyeng. How are you, Kaitiria?
I am great, blessed, and grateful for this opportunity to be on this podcast. Very eager, looking forward to learning more on small businesses, especially with our esteemed guests. A warm welcome to all our viewers at home. Welcome to Unfiltered SA Conversations.
Yes, Action Speaks. Yes, today we're going to have a beautiful show. We'll be talking about small businesses. They call the SMMEs. Their contribution towards our economy, their contribution in our community. But you and I are not experts on this issue. So at least we have our esteemed guests that are going to help us unpack this topic into depth. And of course, I have Mr. Leon Louw, an alumni from the University of Witwatersrand, the founder of Freedom Foundation and Izwelami. Mr. Leon has been in business for long. I mean, he holds a degree in economics and law. Mr. Leon, how are you?
I'm very well indeed and honored to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And right next to him, we have Mr. Malesela Phillip Dolo, who's also the founder and CEO of SA Works. He holds a BCom in Transportation Economics from the University of South Africa. Mr. Dolo, how are you today?
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
No, we thank you, my guest, for really honoring the invite and come to help us unpack this topic that we want to share with our viewers today, the SMMEs. But first, I would just love to pose a question to the both of you. How do SMMEs create jobs in our economy, in our communities? How do they create jobs? Are they playing a role in assisting because we have an unemployment rate that is so high? So how do SMMEs be part of that?
Yes, it's a bit difficult to know exactly what we mean by unemployment because, in fact, the people are not unemployed. They're not employed in the formal sector. And at the moment we talk about, it doesn't really matter, but if you have the disaffected workers and the expanded definition of unemployment, it's over 50% of the workforce. In other words, people who want a job. Now, where are they? They're not starving. They're not on the street corners. Where they are is in the so-called informal business sector, which is neither informal nor is it a sector. So it's a misnomer in economic theory because it's very formal and it covers all sectors. And what is happening is they're probably in the vicinity of about 10 million people unemployed. And, we get precise numbers with decimal places, but that means close to nothing. It's just a lot. It's about half. And where are these people? Well, they are in the SMME, small, medium, and emerging business sector, or it's not a sector, but businesses. And they are mostly there. They're busy doing, we see them all over the show, street trading, backyard mechanics, people teaching, tailors, every activity. I once documented over 100 of these SMME types of activity. And I work with them all the time. They're quite inspirational to me. I work in informal settlements, so-called. They're formal, but nonetheless, that's where I go. And I'm just amazed at the enterprising nature of people. And there are probably something like about 4 million people who are in this SMME sector, and they employ probably between 4 and 6 million. In other words, pretty much the entire unemployed population is that's where they are. They are working and doing stuff and making stuff, and it's fantastic, good for them. And how do they create jobs? Well, they create jobs by just becoming employed. They start selling and they go around and they do painting and artisan work, and they come to visit you and say, can I fix your car? Can I do your garden? May I fix the leak on your roof? Whatever it is. And it's IT services. It becomes very sophisticated. So that's where the people are, and that's where they create jobs. And also don't forget that the so-called big businesses, most of them started small. Many of the most famous businesses started in someone's garage or spare room or whatever, and they become big multinationals. Some are created as big, of course, as we know. Some big businesses create other big businesses, but small business is dynamic. And one of my close friends, Rimbi Kongara, who's the sort of head of ACHIB, the African Chamber of Hawkers and Informal Businesses, she started as literally a street trader sitting under a tree selling, I can't remember what it was, used clothing or something. And she now owns a beautiful shop in Centurion and has moved up. So it's dynamic. And enterprising people don't stay there. It's not static. So it's also, you talk about the sector, but it's not. It's people moving out, moving in, going under, and sometimes part-time. Sometimes they have full-time jobs, but they do so-called moonlighting. So it's complicated. Economics is complicated. It's dynamic. It's wonderful. And the people in the studio with us right now are examples of this. They do this and they do a bit of that, and they double up and they enterprising. And my colleague over here, Donald, does that as well. He does logistics, but he's also involved in other activities. So it's dynamic, it's fantastic, it's enterprising, it's inspirational, and people are not nearly as useless or failed as they think. The rhetoric is, there's all these terrible poor people, they can't eat and they go to bed hungry. No, they're not that stupid and they're not that lazy. They're enterprising and dynamic and heroic, frankly.
Dolo, maybe if you can just in few words. We're in logistics. I think you've been long in the business also. SMMEs create jobs.
Yeah, so no, of course, the small and the medium enterprises, they play a very significant role in the economy of the country. And the challenge that we are facing here is about capacitation. If you see the small businesses, they struggle to grow. Even the medium businesses struggle to grow. Most of those businesses that add on the mainstream of the businesses. We either provide services or we either involve in operations within the big sector of that kind of operation. So the challenge that we are facing, especially in the township, if you look at the businesses in the township, mostly they are more into fast-moving consumer goods. The challenge is we don't have a proper supply chain. We don't have a proper logistics to feed into that economy in the township, to feed into those small businesses in the township. So those small businesses, they struggle actually to source the goods. They either spend so much in terms of transportation where they have to source the goods, and it has a negative impact on their revenue. So we want to see the warehouses mushrooming close to the township. So we want to see people working to get the inventory just around the corner. So we still have that gap, to support the township economy. So we want to see end-to-end, business happening within the township. I don't have to leave Tembisa and go to Johannesburg to get my stock. So when I'm in Tembisa, I want to go to Olifantsfontein, which is less than 3 kilometers, to get the stock. So we want to see the supply chain close to the township so that they can support those SMMEs.
Okay, no, thank you. But I think our guest, no, they are experts. But my question was, do they get jobs? I
gave you a number. It's about 8 million.
They do get jobs.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I think they tried to answer the question as best as they could.
Yes.
I just have a follow-up for Mr. Dolo. You mentioned that a lot of these small businesses actually struggle to grow. So my question would be now, how can government and the private businesses themselves that have already grown and established themselves help the small businesses in the townships to one day get to the big companies level? Are there measures put in place? What role is the government and the private sector playing in helping those small businesses?
Thank you. Yeah, I think the government plays a very major role there. There is some institutions for the government that support the small businesses. The challenge that we have, people are not informed. They don't know where to go to get some support. I think what we want to see those institutions from the government going to the township. We want to see having the workshops, so that this information can get to those people. Unfortunately, people, they don't know about CIFA. They don't know if that institution is existing in order to support them financially. So we want to see, having these business conferences, not in the urban area, not in the city. We want to see the business conferences going straight to the township, so that people can be informed and say, look, this is where we can get support. We want to see the workshops, happening in the township for the small businesses so that they can be empowered, and being exposed to the financial assistance and mentoring as well. I think this will make a very, very significant impact to the business in the township.
Well, thank you, Mr. Louw. I think I will want you to just add on, maybe from the private sector point of view, how can they help small businesses in the townships to grow?
I might disappoint you because I'm going to say, before you help people, stop harming them. And that's what the government mainly does now, and including the formal private sector. It's about harm. Every time some new business starts and succeeds, you get told, no, the Competition Commission says they must be stopped, or they're not licensed, or they're not regulated, or whatever. We've seen it in airlines, we've seen it in logistics, we've seen it in every transport, especially commuter transport. So no, start by doing no harm. And I want to say something here that really is very shocking. When we drive past what we call a township, which is actually a bad word, but no, because a township in law means something that's a proclaimed township in the deeds registry. In other words, Houghton and Constantia are townships in law. But what we call townships, we mean a place like Alex or Diepsloot or Khayelitsha or whatever. Now, when you drive past there, and you drive where we are now in Randburg, everything you see around us here is lawful. Everything. The tenants, the rentals, the property ownership, everything. When you go to Khayelitsha or you go to Alex, everything you see is unlawful. Nobody has zoning. The properties don't have business zoning. They don't have title deeds. They can't get mortgages. All of the shops are not complying with minimum standards. So the first thing is that we need to legalize. We need to decriminalize small business. At the moment, it's all just happens. We know that. It just takes place. But right now, the Johannesburg City Council is proposing laws to keep informal traders off the streets. Why? These are harmless little old ladies sitting under a tree, providing someone with fruit or food or whatever. And the Joburg City Council, instead of helping them, wants to criminalize them. And in fact, we had Operation Clean Sweep in 2014. And I could just say the same for every other city, by the way, just since we're in Johannesburg, let's talk about that. And what is it? It's the cleaning department, the cleansing department, cleaned people away like rubbish and litter off the streets. I mean, it's just think of the psychology of this, that the Joburg City Council gets people cleaned from the streets. About 6,000 informal traders. Now, the Constitutional Court ruled within a month that the council has to let them all back. And why? Because I brought the action. I brought a constitutional action against the council, and the Constitutional Court did something, as far as I know, it's never done before. Since it had what's called a summary hearing, it went straight into a hearing, didn't have to go via the High Court. There were no papers, we just appeared in court, and they made a unanimous ruling that you can't stop harmless, innocent people creating welfare and jobs and feeding their children. And so stop harming people. That's the first thing to do. And that is the main function of government right now. What little help it can give and what little help it would give, or the private sector would give. Well, for example, there are something like 8 million black South Africans at the moment, and I hate the race card, but I've got to mention it in this context, who occupy property but don't own it. Why? Because we've still got Verwoerd's land policy applicable to black people. Black people live on government land. And even RDP houses for 8 years as a so-called preemptive clause. It's not theirs, it's the government's, and they live under house arrest. If they don't stay where the government puts them, they lose their home, and so on and so forth. It's unbelievable. The ghost of Verwoerd walks around the streets of Johannesburg with a big smile on his face saying, if I knew they would implement my land policy against black people, I would have given them power long ago. So that's the first thing. Stop harming. And if they had their title deeds and they had their own land, 8 million people with land worth, according to FNB, between 4 and 6 trillion rand, which is nearly the entire GDP, is dead capital because the people don't have it. Now imagine if they owned it, if they could get mortgage finance and borrow and get loans and so on and so security. So the first thing is get the government out of the way. Don't expect the government to help. That's not what governments do. They harm. And so you want to cut the harm.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Stop the harm. But I just want to bring Dolo here, just to make a follow up on what Mr. Leon has just alluded. In your view, Dolo, given a chance to be a mayor or to be in government as a leader and being from business, what measures would we apply to make sure that, as Leon has just said, that harming the harmless go-go's selling fruits there, what do you think it will be proper measures to be put in place by government to assist SMMEs?
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting. That's a very, very important question, though, because you can say that the government is reacting, and always is reacting if there's a crisis. And I'm quite happy now there's a legislation that is just get gazetted, the bylaws within the province, how to regulate the small businesses. And why are we having those bylaws now? Why didn't we have those bylaws, 5 or 10 years ago? It is because it has been triggered, But what Mr. Louw just said, that they've been harming the people. In which way? Because, there was a gap. They were not regulating these spaza shops. They were not regulated. We are sitting with 400 plus cases, of poisonous people who have been poisoned by the food that they're buying from the spaza shops. We've got 23 kids that are died because of those kind of food that they buy that are not regulated, they're not branded. So to be in the government, you need to have the law how to regulate the small businesses, and we have to enforce that law. There's a difference between introducing the law and enforcing the law. And this new legislation that they just introduced now in the bylaws in these 9 regions within Gauteng and 3 metros, the question is, how are they going to enforce those laws? To make sure that the small businesses that are operating in the township, in the cities, are they safe? Are they selling the right product? Are they not selling the illicit products? The question is that how are they going? Do we have capacity? Does the government has capacity, to enforce those laws? So that is a big question mark. It's good in black and white, but the question is the implementation, and I'm looking forward to see how are they going to implement that. Thank you.
I think just before we ask our next question, this question would be directed to you, Mr. Leon. I'm going to be a little bit controversial in my question. Is it safe to say that the government is the biggest gatekeeper for, just to put the race card on the table again, for Black people who are trying to create a life for themselves through small businesses? Because I've also been hearing from your responses that the other problem is the lack of information. People are not well informed as to how they can go about registering these small businesses and actually getting them to grow. So could you maybe just confirm if the government is the biggest gatekeeper to a lot of these businesses growing and these families being able to sustain themselves?
You said you want to be controversial? Okay, then I'll be controversial. The government is not only just the biggest gatekeeper, but the people at the top of the government don't even know that they are. Our president in his State of the Nation address said that the government is going to liberalize and stimulate the economy and cut red tape and so on and make it an enabling environment. While he is giving his State of the Nation address, Parliament has in front of it 5 or 6 laws that do the opposite, that create more red tape, more regulation, more tax. In other words, he doesn't know, the head of the state doesn't know that government is the gatekeeper, that he's the gatekeeper. So why is this? Why is this complete mystery of the government just passing law after law after law, not enabling laws like Donald's talking about, but stifling laws, restrictive laws, laws that prevent people operating, tighten up. Take a simple thing like a zoning law. Right now in Alex, there are nursery schools where single mothers leave their kids during the day while they go and work somewhere, formal or informal, doesn't matter. And those are all unlawful. Every single one of them is criminalized. And every now and then the child welfare department comes around. So what they have to do, think of the human cruelty involved, is they can't let the kids play in the garden because then the inspectors realize where the nursery school is. So they have to keep them indoors, in rooms, quiet, all day, while the mother's earning a living and able to feed them and clothe them and home them. So, no, we need the government to actually, never mind the informal businesses of the business people are uninformed. Of course they are. But the worst thing is the members of parliament are uninformed. I kind of wish one day I could take them on a tour of places like Diepsloot, Soweto, Marathon and Delport, whatever. I don't know if they ever go there. Many of them were born there, but when last did they visit such a place? Do they know what happens there? Do they know that everything that has happened there has been made by them a criminal offense? Now, it's not as if the law, they operate. But what happens is the police and the inspectors go around, of course, and collect bribes. If you don't give me, and I'm going to talk of radical, brothels, technically unlawful. Now, what the police do is they don't shut them. They all operate. They just go there and they say, if you give me free services, we'll turn a blind eye to it. And if you pay us at the spaza shop, you give us so much per month, we'll allow you to carry on operating without building codes, without licensing laws, without employment laws for the staff, without everything. Every single, there are probably about 20, I could rattle them off because I'm a lawyer as well, 20 or so laws which every spaza shop is in violation of now. And in order to carry on operating, they have to pay bribes, and the state capture story kicks in. So what we need to do is we need to start by saying, Mr. President, won't you please look at what your own parliament is doing? When you say in your State of the Nation address you're going to remove red tape, your own parliament right that very day is imposing more red tape. Now, wake up.
Mr. Dolo, my time is really catching up on me. But in 2 minutes or 1 minute or so, that question again, is the government a gatekeeper?
Well, I won't think that the government is a gatekeeper. I think the government is ignorant. It's very, very ignorant. Because, to grow the economy, especially in the township, because it's a multi-million rand economy, the township business. So you have to empower the small businesses. You have to educate the small businesses. Then you can regulate. So they are not educating them. They are not empowering them. How are they going to regulate them? So it's quite tricky. So you can see that there's a vacuum there. So the government is nowhere to be found. And we've got powerful institutions, we've got policies in this country how to manage these small businesses. But because they're ignorant, nothing is happening.
Now, assuming that the small businesses owners are empowered and are informed, what would life look like in the townships if these small businesses were to flourish?
Yes, that's what my fantasy is. So this is a lovely question. Thank you. I, for example, go into one of the biggest and poorest shanty towns in South Africa, Marathon and Delport in Kuruleni, the old mine dumps. It's in there. You fly over it when you land it or depart from our Tambo. And these people over there live in tin shacks. Now, this is what happens throughout South Africa at the moment. People, they're not going to be moved. They're permanent, these so-called shanty towns. But if they replace their tin shack with a brick structure, a permanent structure, what does the council do? It comes and bulldozes it down. So now there are people running a spaza shop out of a tin shack, but they may not build. They are forbidden from building. And this is, in my view, a constitutional violation. Their right to human dignity is violated by this. They are not allowed to improve their own living standards. They're not allowed to improve their own business standards. And so what the world would look like if we encouraged and supported and decriminalized the entire small business sector, is stunning, beautiful little alleyways and streets with shops and flags and pretty outdoor restaurants and so on, like you've had all over Indonesia, Europe, whatever. There are many, many countries that flourish in this small, very, very small business sector. Ours is made to look ugly. They don't have water, they don't have sewerage, they don't have refuse removal. And in fact, they are removed by the refuse removal department. Instead of the refuse removal department removing the refuse, they remove the people. And so it would be a beautiful world of flourishing businesses, of enterprise, of energy, dynamic, and there are many places like that in the world. You go to India, for example, depending on which state and in which province, because they vary a lot. But it's just inspirational to see the energy, the dynamism, the catering, the clothing, the tailoring, the everything. And Nigeria has places, again, Nigeria varies from province to province. So you can't generalize about a federation like Nigeria or India or Indonesia or Germany or Belgium or Switzerland. They vary. But this would be a beautiful world. And we want to have a world in which people feel free, are free, and enterprise produces the results of being enterprising. Lawrence Mavundlo was the head of the Black Business Council and president of NAFCOC at one time, president of ACHIB, another leading South African businessman. He wrote a wonderful book many, many years ago called Freedom to be Enterprising. And that's what we want. We want freedom of enterprise. And that is what people in South Africa want. You mentioned the townships, by the way, but I do want to be careful here. Don't forget the rural areas and the traditional areas, which are as important. And again, they are not allowed to build permanent structures. They don't have title deeds. They can't use their property as security, etc. And I don't want to interfere with the traditional system. I just want the traditional system to be allowed to make these changes, to become pro-business, to become pro-property rights, etc. And people say, the chiefs won't agree. And I always say, did you ask them? Because I have. I've traveled around and spoken to them. And they all just want their communities to prosper. Everyone wants everyone around them to be prosperous. That is, the richest capitalist in the world is only rich because poor people have money with which to buy their products and services. So it'll be a beautiful world and a liberated world, and a world that we should have in the new South Africa 30 years after apartheid. Instead, we still live in the world that was Verwoerd's fantasy.
Dolo, thank you, Mr. Leon. The flourishment of SMMEs will mean beautiful, as you say, in your own words, beautiful world that we have. As an SMME, as a business person, in your capacity, what is the best mechanism that can be used just to develop our communities, especially the aunties, who are selling streets, the nursery that you're talking about, Mr. Leon? What exact measures should be put in place so that we help those small businesses in our township?
Well, it's simple. It's about training. You know, we need to have a good customer services in these businesses in the township. Mostly, you find out that the customer services is very bad. The other thing, the branding is very, very important. The image of the business is very, very important. So, you know, it should be something that is, when I go to the spaza shop to buy quota there, I need to look at that business. I need just to have, you know, this kind of image, you know, that this business is kind of appetizing. I can buy quota there. You know, I won't have doubts that is contaminated. So we want to see those kind of things. So the training is very, very critical. You know, how do you project your business? The image of the business is very, very important. The branding, the customer service, how do you relate with your client? The financial management as well is very, very important. You know, if you have the customer service, the financial management training, and we want those people to be trained, you know, we must come up with those initiatives in the township to say, let's empower our small businesses through these kind of processes and systems. And I'm telling you, we will have a good, I don't have to go to KFC or Nando's. I will buy a plate in the township and enjoy my meal.
Very interesting. So it's safe to say if we equip our people with the necessary knowledge, we capacitate our people, then we can be able to get away from this supposed gatekeeping government of ours.
Yes, and I would just remind you, don't underestimate people. They are spontaneously, naturally dynamic. And as I say, start by stopping the harm.
Stopping the harm. Yeah, as I'm about to close, maybe, Dolo, you've spoken about the training, the workshops that need to be done in our communities. But still, how do these people who are having this capacity to come to our communities and train them? Somebody's watching me now. Is watching me now and saying, "I can hear everything that you're talking about, but now how do I capacitate my business? How do I get that training? Who do I call? Who do I contact? What do I do from now? I want to have a sponsor shop. What do I do in 2 minutes? Just in 2 minutes, maybe a brief to say maybe CIFA. What is CIFA? Maybe where they can Google or whatever. Because the thing is, we will be talking, but somebody is sitting now home and say, "But I want this information. How do I get it?"
Well, I think what is missing in the township, we don't have business forums. That should be a vehicle that drives all these workshops, and the business forum should bring these institutions to the township. So we don't have the business forums for the SMMEs in the township. We normally have the business forums in the industrial sector and in the big businesses, but that one is missing in the township. We don't have business forums. So I will actually encourage the small businesses in the township, to come together, to form a forum. So that forum is the one that can drive all these trainings and capacitation of the small businesses. But that thing is missing. We need to have forums, business forums in the townships.
Yes, so I would just say that we have had fantastic organizations historically. The biggest business organization in South Africa for many decades was NAFCOC, National African Federated Chambers of Commerce, which is a federation of many chambers of commerce in the so-called townships, or in those days they were called locations and settlements and villages. And, that needs to be able to perform its function again. ATCHIB, the African Chamber of Hawkers and Informers, SASTA, the South African Spaza and Tuck Shop Association. These organizations exist, but at the moment, they are, believe it or not, they're involved in fighting for their survival against the city councils, which are just trying to close them all down instead of capacitating and helping and so on. So these organizations can become the vehicle. They can become more popular and empowered. I think NAFCOC still is the biggest business organization in South Africa, and it's almost 100% black people and small and SMME people. And ATCHIB is its sort of informal. And then there's things like NAFA, the National African Farmers Union, and so on. So there are many of these structures, but at the moment they are busy fighting off the gatekeeper, as you used the term, which is trying to shut them down instead of help them. And what Donald is saying is absolutely right. Turn this on its head. Just go 180-degree reversal so that when the president gives a State of the Nation address in Parliament, he means it. And it's actually what Parliament is doing, is removing the restrictions and the red tape and becoming a facilitator instead of a gatekeeper and a stifler. And I just want to say that, many people think the biggest residential area in South Africa is Johannesburg or Pretoria or Cape Town, Durban or whatever. No, it's actually Bushbuck Ridge, Bosbokrand. Look on Google Earth and you'll see it's about 150k north-south and about 100k east-west. And it's the biggest residential area. Now, and Bosbokrand used to be one of the most poor places in South Africa. Chickens and goats and pigs and mud roads and donkey carts. You go there now, there are thousands of middle-class houses and shopping centers and traffic jams and shops and hotels. And this is what happens if people are just left alone. Now, I think because Bosbokrand or Bushbuck Ridge was so far away and no one ever knew, no one ever went there unless you were going into the Numbi Gate of Kruger Park or the Kruger Gate, and you lost your way and you didn't go via Hazy View, and instead you went through this terrible, in those days, place. Now, it's this booming, flourishing community. They've done it by themselves, but they still, everything they still don't have title deeds, they still don't have zoning, they still don't have building plans, they still don't comply with labour law, etc., etc., etc. So we really need the government to say, we are going to stop harming these people. And what we do is going to facilitate and help these people, and the private sector, the same thing. But I want to pay tribute to the people in this sector. They are wonderful people, inspiring, motivational, and all we have to do is stop holding them down. Right now, the Joburg City Council is doing exactly that. And it's backyard mechanics, and it's plumbers, and it's builders, and carpenters, and painters, and all of these people. Now, of course, what happens is the big formal businesses come and lobby for protection. We want stricter licensing laws and keep them out and so on. No. We want to liberate all South Africans. We want true liberation. We have not yet had that in South Africa, and it's 30 years after apartheid. It's unforgivable. It's time to liberate.
Yeah, no, what a day, what an insightful topic that we had, and I think I've learned a lot. Yeah, but my time, Boitumelo, it's about, I need to let my guests go, but I want to thank you once more time to say, Mr. Leon, thank you for coming and sharing your experience in your field, and Mr. Dolo, thank you so much for coming and sharing, because I think many people have learned and are going to learn again about this issue of small businesses, and I really want to appreciate you, Boitumelo, looking lovely as always. Thank you. Unfiltered SA Conversation Action Speaks podcast. We're speaking about the SMMEs. But one thing that I've liked, I'm going to use it as I close. Gatekeeping and ignorant. That's what it is. Thank you so much. Then continue to support and tune in on our Unfiltered SA Conversation Action Speaks podcast on our YouTube channel. We're going to share the link on the screen below so that you can be able to like, share, and subscribe. We love you so much. As always, I always say, Webster Kutoane,
Thank you, guys, and I hope to see you guys next time. Please, small businesses, guys, do educate yourself on the bylaws, on the regulations, and to starting a business, and do not allow what our government is doing to stop you from creating a beautiful life for yourself. Thank you.